Thanks for joining us on the Beyond Sunday podcast today. I'm excited for our conversation today. We're going to talk about cultivating health. Let's talk about that.
You are watching the Beyond Sunday podcast.
Well, thanks for joining us today. I am joined by Kenna Morrison, and we're going to have a conversation about cultivating health. Reason why I had reached out to you specifically, I know that this has been like a life value of yours and kind of a journey that you've been on for a bunch of different reasons in cultivating health. But in general, just to dive into the conversation, what does health look like? What does health feel like to you when you're pursuing after health? What do you think about mean when you think about cultivating health?
I would say for me, it's a state of well-being, and so it's pursuing after feeling good in all areas, not just physical. I think that's the go-to for most people, is to think physical health.
Sure.
But in my experience in the last few years, it's expanded beyond just physical. It's gone to mental health, spiritual health, emotional health, all areas.
What kind of, for you, what kickstarted the drive, desire to dive into health?
Yeah.
Kind of from what you said, kind of a holistic understanding and living in health from all facets of life.
I was thinking about this, and I would say before coming to Christ Church, I think that was the real turning point, was just becoming part of this family. I really only focused on physical health. I worked out a lot.
You were a runner.
I was a runner. I was mindful about what I was eating, and that was about the extent of it. And then a couple years ago, I get diagnosed with cancer, and things just kind of, it just opened my eyes to all the aspects of health and how it's all connected. I mean, we are mind, body, and spirit, and so it became more than just physical health for me. It became focusing on my mental health and what impact cancer has on me. It impacted, obviously, my spiritual health. It impacted all areas, and so I think that was what has really opened my eyes to focusing on health and cultivating that in my life.
Do you feel like if you had maybe a point to start, like did you start with health in general in mind? I know you said previously it was like I was more concerned about physical health, exercising, what I'm putting in my body. As you've kind of journeyed through the last multiple years now, is it, do you feel like there's a starting point, or do you just kind of place health in front of you and say, I'm going to just try to apply this understanding in all areas of my life? How have you tackled, like, where to start?
Oh gosh, where to start? For me, at that time when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was all about physical health. And then once we got through the hardest part of it, which was the chemo treatments and surgery and radiation and all that stuff, then my focus kind of shifted towards the mental health side of it. Because at the time, I wasn't paying any attention to my mental health. I was just trying to get through the season.
Yep.
And so there were just times that I focused more on one than the other. And so I think you would just have to kind of recognize what needs the most attention.
Yeah.
In the moment.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I think I've thought about this. We'll talk as a team here at Christ Church about stuff like this, where we may have a million things that we want to focus on or make better or grow into, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
However, that's kind of a daunting reality. Like,
Yeah.
I can't just start fixing all of the things,
Yeah.
because then you oftentimes just stare at a list of things and go, I have no idea what to do with all of this.
Yeah.
And all of it needs to get better,
Mm-hmm.
but finding a starting point, one of the questions that we ask our team and talk about is, what one thing, if it got better, made the biggest difference?
Yeah.
So what's our lowest hole in the bucket?
Yeah.
You know, if you're filling it up with water, what's leaking?
Mm-hmm.
What thing do I need to just elevate in my life?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I think that maybe is maybe a fear point, a stopping point for people from engaging in it, but also super overwhelming. We want to experience the fullness or the goal of health
Mm-hmm.
now and immediately and in everything.
Yeah.
And at least in my experience, that really isn't how it works.
No.
And
No.
so, again, I try and make sure that I share this, but our lens and conversation is going to be through the eyes of a Christ follower.
Okay.
So it's the voice, it's the place that we're speaking from. But in that, we often want to arrive at the end point of total and complete health.
Mm-hmm.
At times, for me, one of the frustrating things is I don't think we actually ever get there. This side of heaven,
No.
we have what is a lifelong journey of just getting healthier.
Right.
And so, with no true arrival point in mind, we may have goals that we've set, and that's
Mm-hmm.
great. That's
Mm-hmm.
really helpful for people
Mm-hmm.
to have something that they're like going to reach for.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it can be really daunting, because you're like, oh my gosh, I have all of these things that, you know, we would maybe even say are wrong with me, or
Yeah.
I need to fix these things.
Yeah.
And it's super daunting. And so I think it's really important to identify, these are the areas where I recognize that I need to grow in. I need to gain some health, spiritual, mental, physical.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some really good markers to look at different areas of your life. And so if you're actually listening or watching this podcast and you're journeying through some of this, that's probably a really, really good first step. Just identify the general areas of your life, which one's the weakest.
Yeah.
That gives a kind of a nice launching point
Yeah.
into some of that. What would you say, and maybe you answered this a little bit, but what is our, like, if we have a goal in mind,
Mm-hmm.
Knowing and understanding that we don't achieve some, arrival point or fullness of health, what's the point in pursuing after it if we don't receive all of it? Why does it still matter that we pursue after health? That's a big question.
That's such
Sorry.
a big question. Thanks. Well, I mean, for me, the goal of health is wholeness. And like you said, we're not ever going to be completely whole this side of heaven. But just came to me, if I am not healthy mentally
Mm-hmm.
or physically, whatever, then I can't love people very well. I can't parent very well if I'm in a bad place. I can't
Yeah.
love my spouse if I'm not in a healthy place. And so if we are talking through the context of being Christ people,
Yep.
and our Great Commission is to love God and love others, well, part of that needs to be taking care of ourselves so that we can love others.
Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of a secret sauce understanding of it. If we are a temple, we're a dwelling place for Christ, everything that flows out of us is going to permeate who we are internally.
Mm-hmm.
From the physical aspect, I don't want to live with physical limitations. I can't do something because ... Or when it comes down to complications, life tends to hit pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to walk through some really, really difficult things. If we're not putting in effort and drive toward cultivating health holistically in our life, all areas,
Mm-hmm.
we really don't actually have well and good capacity to walk through any of those things effectively.
Right.
So we experience the most difficult trail of life possible without health in
Right.
each one of these areas.
Yeah.
I think it seems to be kind of the American mentality to bootstrap yourself, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
like, well, yeah, life is hard, but surely you could put in a little bit more effort, right? Or we've kind of experienced this in a pretty fresh way. It used to be like your test for staying home from work. I had to be pretty sick. You have to have a wicked fever
Yeah.
or whatever, and then went through a pandemic, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of this several years ago now, and it started to like come at our approach to life very differently.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, hold on. And so as I know, as a church, as we started looking at our value of cultivating health,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, if you're sick, if you're not well, it's not a COVID conversation at all.
Yeah.
If you're just sick, we need to do the healthy thing. You need to go rest.
Yeah.
We have PTO for this, you know,
Yeah.
utilize it. You need to
Mhm.
go rest. That's what health looks like. When it comes to mental battles, we have space and capacity to pull somebody on our team aside and sit down and say, hey, I'm just mentally struggling with fill in the blank.
Mhm.
Can you help me understand how I should process this? It's a really, really great exercise of health,
Yeah.
you know? And so I think that's it's kind of a counterculture way to approach some things, because we feel like we're trying to impress everybody around us.
Mm-hmm.
We work really, really hard.
Yeah.
And it goes against some of the most healthy decisions we can make in order to make somebody impressed with us.
To what?
Yeah, what does it really gain us?
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think is the draw or allure to bootstrapping ourselves? Like, what is it within us that makes us want to impress the people around us? Is there a fear with that? What's it felt like for you?
Okay, so I know that some people aren't in this camp, but I'm kind of in the camp of the Enneagram.
Okay, sure.
So I identify as a type 3 on the Enneagram, which is called the achiever. And our core fear is, what is it? I can't even think of the word now. But we want to achieve so that people will think of us a certain way.
Right.
And we work really hard.
Producing things.
Yeah, it's all about production. Yeah. And so when I learned that about myself, I started questioning, like, where is that even coming from? And why do I care so much about how much I'm producing, what other people are thinking of me and my production? And so it does go back to a fear for me, at least, in a fear of letting people down, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's some weakness and I fail people by being sick or yeah, it's and I think those tools like that are helpful. I'm not usually I don't dive down the bunny trails of personality profiles. However, I've found them to be extremely helpful.
Yeah.
They give great information and understanding to some things that maybe we don't always have language around naturally. My personality on some level doesn't like to be told who I am. And so I can be naturally a little resistant to that. However, some of it's so helpful if I'm willing to be honest with myself.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's not wrong. I don't necessarily love whatever it is about me, But that's not wrong. And the more we understand about who we are, what we deal with, what are the things that we trip over, I don't want to let people down.
Yeah.
For me, I don't want to reach a pain point. I want to avoid pain at all costs. I'm fun to be around because of that.
Yeah.
I want an environment to feel light. I want it to feel like a breath of fresh air. I want it to be fun. I want to laugh. And if there is turmoil, I want to deal with it immediately. Well, sometimes that's not the healthiest thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's great healing in sitting in moments of pain at times.
Yeah.
And understanding. And so,
Yeah. And for me, it's the opposite is rest.
yeah.
And so when I was first diagnosed with cancer, I had to rest. I had no option. And I remember specifically laying in bed one night, and we had a 6-month-old daughter at the time, and I couldn't do anything to help her, to put her to bed.
Hmm.
And I'm laying in bed and I'm crying, and my husband comes in and I'm like, I'm broken. Like, I'm so sorry that I cannot do this.
Mm-hmm.
And he just was like, just lay down, like chill out, rest.
Right.
It's going to be okay. And that spoke so much to my core fear of not being able to produce, not being able to live up to something and really allow my spirit to rest and to realize that physically I needed to rest, but my spirit needs to rest because we're going through something really hard.
Sure.
And so that's been where I've seen a lot of growth in me, is just I'm more okay with resting because I know that it's the most healthy thing that I can do for myself.
Do you feel like we at times project how things are going to be perceived far more aggressively than reality? Like, do we assume things like for that scenario that you just shared, you know, you're having this turmoil of I can't do anything. Well, in the moment you're not supposed to, but that doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like I can't help. I'm not being able to do anything at all. I'm abandoning people. I'm letting people down.
Yeah.
All the while, what speaks most is your husband being able to say, we're good. And now it's your turn to just rest. Just, you need to be healthy.
Right.
Which means you need to say no to some things. And oftentimes I think, I'm not saying don't parent your children if you have the capacity to, but there are times that noble things aren't the healthy thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good and necessary to say no to certain things that are fine things, you know, in order to cultivate and grow up different areas of health in our lives, from spiritual. And there's, I think for me at least, there's a lot of disciplines that help with those things. And so I don't know what some of your disciplines are, but I know like spiritually for me, some of the disciplines are, I'm going to have time to pray. I'm going to have time where I read my Bible. I'm going to have time where I'm a musician, so I like to play music. I like to have some worship times. And it's just for me. And so those are healthy disciplines. When it comes to eating, I have less healthy disciplines than I should. We just had lunch. I ate 2 chicken sandwiches.
What's healthy about that?
It was chicken.
Okay.
I think that's what's healthy about it.
Fried
That might
oil.
be it. Yeah, exactly. Peanut oil.
Okay, so that's better.
We'll go with that.
I shouldn't criticize. I love Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
I just find myself sitting in the judgment seat way too much than I should.
Yeah, sometimes it's a pretty tempting seat.
Yeah.
But I think disciplines are a really, really important next step across the board. If you want to elevate health, find disciplines. I think that's probably a really, really great, solid takeaway for anybody listening or watching this episode, is figure out in generalities, what are some disciplines that you can place in to cultivate health. This is what God has designed us to be, healthy and whole beings, to what you had said. And so I think this is something worth pursuing after and fighting for. So find some disciplines for health. Do something that's physical, some sort of exercise, an activity. Do something that you love to do that engages physical health. Make sure that you, for me, I need to drink less Diet Coke, more water. I'm just saying. Disciplines. But find disciplines in each one of those areas and engage in them. And then just take kind of an account of where you're at. Maybe you do this once a month. Say, hey, for today, what's my weakest place in health, in a holistic understanding approach to health? What's my weakest point, and how do I need to elevate that? Maybe it's take a discipline more seriously, whatever it may be. But I think that's a really, really good takeaway from the conversation. And so I'd encourage you to do that. Keep the conversation going. Comment below this video. Share with us what questions you have or what thoughts you have. Let's keep the conversation going. But for now, that's what we know.
This has been another episode of the Beyond Sunday podcast. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe.